overextend. Help youth use social media in healthy ways, and I've got a resource on that to share. And this is really important too. Model the healthy behavior you wish to see. If parents are always on social media, kids are more likely to be on social media. You know, fill in the blank behavior. If parents drink excessively, kids are more likely to drink excessively, etc. And this is really important. If there are persistent problems, don't just say, oh, they're just teenagers. Because that's not typical for the actual typical teenager, and they probably need and could benefit from some professional help. This will be on the slides. I've given you links to an article that I and some colleagues wrote that covers a lot of what I did today. This is the American Psychological Association's Health Advisory on Social Media Use, has great suggestions for healthy social media use. Maybe you've heard the Surgeon General talk about loneliness. This is just a recent podcast I heard him on that actually starts with something a little political, so you can just skip over that, but it's mostly an interview with him. And if you don't have access to this article, I can get you a copy, but it is a great read on the problems, what parents, teachers, schools, and other stakeholders can do about the problems of youth in high-achieving schools. So, thank you.
All right, remember how to flip. Thank you.
There we are.
Oh, it's all the way to the end. There we go. All right, as I said earlier, my name is Keisha Horton. I am currently the mental health clinician for Winston-Salem County Schools. I am also a licensed clinical mental health counselor and clinical addiction specialist and professional school counselor. I was the director of student services at Parkland Magnet High School for 5 years, which, you know, I've gotten questions about this morning, so yes, I was there when the infamous slap happened. So we are going to talk today about adolescent mental health, helping our students cope. She covered a lot of it, but I definitely want to make sure that you all understand what mental health means. Mental health is a state of mind. It is a state of mental well-being that enables people to cope with the stresses of life, realize their abilities, learn well, and work well, and contribute to their community. That's what mental health is. There are lots of pieces to mental health, of course, emotional, psychological, social well-being, behavior, emotions, all that she went over earlier. Some mental health conditions that we all know are depression, anxiety, ADHD, and PTSD. I want to introduce you to ACEs if you've never heard of it. I believe it at 1,000%. It stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. Most of our students may not have a diagnosis, but they're dealing with symptoms caused by ACEs, right? That's trauma. There's different forms of trauma. ACEs can include violence, it can include abuse. Growing up in a family with drug or substance abuse can also cause mental health concerns. And then, of course, there's toxic stress and the brain development piece that she touched on that will take more than an hour to go into, but it definitely plays a part in mental health. And then I just want to point out that half of our mental health diagnoses today show signs before 14 years old, and the earlier the better if we can get them the help that we talked about earlier. What is Winston-Salem County Schools doing about it? I am here for them today, so I want to make sure you guys know what we're doing. We do have school-based mental health programs. We are partnering with 12 agencies in the community, and every school has an agency assigned to them. Where students we can make referrals through your school counselor and our social worker. We make referrals and they get the services in the building, in the school. That kind of reduces that barrier where parents couldn't get their children to therapy because they're in school most of the day or having to take them out of school to go to appointments. So we do have 12, and I say 11 on here because School Health Alliance is a totally separate baby. They are through Wake Forest, and they have become one of our biggest partners. They are covering a majority of our schools right now, but we are working really hard to get more in-house mental health clinicians. I am the one and only right now, but we are working really hard to get grants And we can go into that, but that would take more than an hour or two. Why do we have to have grants? But anyway, we are working to get more in-house clinicians where we don't have to partner with agencies, because there are barriers there. We have to go through a lot of legalistics to make that happen. But we are providing the services in our schools. Kingswood is also one of Forsyth County schools that is a day treatment school. We work with Alexander Youth Network, and the students are going to a totally separate campus, getting therapy throughout the day in their studies. It's a totally separate setting. There is a very complicated process for students to get into Kingswood, because we have a lot of kids with diagnosis, so it's not as simple as having a diagnosis. But we do have a process for students, and there's a committee of us that review those applications coming from principals for students, and there are criteria to be able to go to Kingswood. Insurance, of course, is involved with all of this, which unfortunately is also a barrier. So you do have to have insurance to be serviced by school-based mental health and by Kingswood. There are private residential treatment facilities that's outside of the district, right? That's outside of the city in a lot of cases, may even be outside of the state, that kids sometimes have to go to get treatment, long-term treatment. We have transition plans for that. When they come back into the schools or when they're going out, we're working on transition plans. We sit down with the families to try to make sure those transitions are as easy as possible. Because the worst thing you can do is re-trigger a student, right? They come into the school, been in treatment for over a month, come back in, and within a week, it's like all that work is undone, right? So we try our best to have transition plans for them. We do suicide safety assessments. Unfortunately, way too much. We had 424 last year. We do behavior, this is district-wide, we do behavior threat assessments, and we had 99 last year. The difference between the two, of course, we're focused here on students who say they don't want to be here anymore, right? Or they're having feelings of intrusive thoughts where they don't want to be here anymore. Behavior threat assessments, we're concerned about them hurting someone else, right? So we're worried about them hurting themselves, we're worried about them hurting someone else. Those are the difference between those assessments. I, in my new role, oversee both of those processes, and we track that data quarterly. Holistic Wellness Summit, that is something that was started in 2023, where our students lead that effort through our Superintendent Student Advisory Council. We have a wellness summit. Last year it was school-based. This year they want to do it on a teacher work day, so we don't have to worry about students missing class. So it'll be on April 21st, 2025. There's a committee of us working really hard on that summit. It will be on the campus of the Career Center in Kennedy. But you'll hear more about that in the community. We're working with lots of community partners to make that happen. There'll be a whole, like, if you ever been to a conference where you get to choose sessions, that's kind of what we're building for students, trying to do an app and everything. We do community engagement workshops. If you didn't hear, I brought David McGee in conjunction with St. Mary United Methodist Church. Back in October, that was the first time we had a district-wide initiative focused on mental health and substance abuse. I was super glad to be a part of it. We hope to do a lot more of that. And Did You Know videos started last year, where we just do little snippets of information and send those out. Of course, every school has school counselors, social workers, psychologists. They are limited, and I don't have time to go into that, but they are limited. The max that we have right now, I think Reagan has about 2,400 kids, and they have 6 counselors. District-based staff, student services department, there's only 2 of us. There's Wanda Kellerman, who's our mental health coordinator. She focuses on programming, and me, the mental health clinician, who focuses on actual services. These are some of our North Carolina facts. 4 people a day die by suicide. It has increased by 23% since 2013 and 15% since the pandemic started in 2019. She touched a little bit on that. We've seen a lot of mental health crisis increase since COVID, of course, but that problem was there before COVID. I like to point that out everywhere I go, because we like to blame COVID for everything. It did, unfortunately, exacerbate it, but it did not cause it. Nearly 1/5 of high school students have considered suicide, 1/6 have had a plan, and 1/10 have attempted. 22% of middle school students have considered suicide, 17 have planned, 10 attempted. Suicide accounts for nearly 1 in 5 deaths amongst 7th to 12th graders. That one always takes my breath away. It's the second leading cause of death from ages 10 to 24. Recently, I was involved in a conversation and we looked at each state, and the number 1 and number 2 cause of death in every state in the United States is suicide and gun violence. It depends on the state which one is 1 and which one is 2, but they are the top 2 in every state in the United States. 66% of children visit the ED for mental health, which we are trying our best in Winston-Salem to encourage them to go to the mental health crisis center over off of Highland Avenue, because our emergency rooms are overwhelmed. There are 12,666 self-inflicted injuries reported among North Carolina residents in 2023. When we say self-inflicted injuries, that could be cutting, right? That could be burning. That could be doing a lot of different things to themselves. We've seen a huge increase in that area as well. For younger kids, educators report seeing more aggressive behavior, dysregulating, bullying, and disruption. A lack of emotional regulation that appears like isolation during the pandemic. We talked a lot about loneliness and isolation. That is what exacerbated it. The behaviors have increased, as you all know. We've had a code of conduct in our district now for 2 years, and it's actually already being revamped. But there are lots of behavior issues, but I believe, hurt people. So a lot of it is tied back to mental health. Among high school students, the rates of chronic I hate that word, is defined as missing 10% or more school days has also doubled, guys. That's been a big issue since we got back from COVID, for more reasons than one. A lot of kids don't want to come back to school. The state of behavior healthcare in North Carolina, this is a pretty little chart, graphic I found. There is a severe shortage of professionals to treat both our adults and our children with behavioral health disorders. 94 counties are considered mental health professional shortage areas. We only have 100, so that means 6 in our whole state has what they need. 61 counties have no child or adolescent psychiatrists, and 52% of youth who experience a major depressive episode do not receive treatment that they need. We are ranked 38 out of 51, right? In the United States to access mental health care. So we've got a problem in North Carolina. We have a serious shortage. There's even more of a shortage of minority providers. Suicide death rates, I just let you kind of take a look at it. It is broken down by male and female. It's broken down by several different cultures and age ranges. The one I like to point out is, although her graphs pointed out that some of our concerns decrease the older they get, this chart will show you that unfortunately we're seeing a serious increase in suicides amongst our older population. So I always like to point that out. But if you see right there that 10 to 18 is 5.3, and it jumps up to 15.1 once they get out of school as well. So we got a lot of reason to be concerned here. I also like to point out, yes, males unfortunately is a lot higher than females. What the data shows is that females attempt suicide more often, but males complete suicide more often. Females do things, but they're not mostly successful. Unfortunately, males are successful. More than 1/4 of our suicide victims told someone or disclosed their suicide intent beforehand. That means we need to be mindful of when people make those comments. I've heard folks say they just want attention. I've heard folks say, she heard somebody else say that, or she's been watching too much TV. We downplay it a lot, unfortunately. As adults, we downplay it a lot. I don't downplay it when a child says that they don't want to be here, or they just wish they could die, they wish they didn't wake up this morning. All of that should be taken seriously. So unfortunately, more females experience the current mental health problem than males, and females were more likely to have a history of suicidal behavior, but there's always signs. There's always signs. I think we both did our things in Microsoft, and we're using Apple today, so they don't talk to each other well. So I'm sorry the charts are overlapping a little bit, but hopefully you can get the point. Suicide deaths are just the tip of the iceberg. This is a little chart showing that we had 12,402 self-inflicted injury ED visits in 2022. 2,973 of them were hospitalizations, and 1,562 were deaths. but that's just the iceberg. Self-inflicted injuries is a problem. Our kids are cutting at mass rates. They are burning at mass rates. The science says that they're doing it to relieve the pain that they're feeling mentally or emotionally. A lot of people don't think that makes sense, but to them it does, and it is becoming a crisis. Rates of self-inflicted injury, hospitalizations are the highest among females, white residents, and children ages 10 to 18. You can kind of look over this chart and see that there's a serious increase amongst 10 to 18-year-olds, and it drops the older that they get. But if you remember the chart before, suicides increase the older that they get. So the self-injury is becoming a different kind of crisis. There's some more data. I love this website. It is full of stuff. So you'll get this PowerPoint, and if you're on the email list, and I just like to throw that in there if you would like to dig into that data a little bit more. So how can we support our students? I don't have enough time, but I love to say ring the alarm. Advocate, educate, protect. Those are my three mottos. We have to advocate for all our students. As we heard earlier, it's not just the south side of town, right? It's the north, the south, the east. It's everywhere. Our kids are struggling on all of our schools. It just looks different. On the north side of town, where we see the Reagans and the Mount Tabors of the world, we're seeing more suicidal ideation and opioid addiction. On the south side of town at the Parklands of the world, we're seeing more marijuana addictions. But they're all coping with the same thing, mental health and or trauma issues. So we need to make sure we're advocating for all our students. Students just want to be heard, so make sure you're a supportive listener. I kind of alluded to that earlier. Do not minimize. When they talk, listen, because it's hard for them to talk sometimes. So make sure you're listening and not judging. They sometimes have a hard time trusting adults, so we must build rapport and be a safe place for them. I use that phrase a lot. They are looking for a safe place. We, as I said earlier, have school counselors and social workers in the building, but school counselors are overwhelmed with academics. Our number one goal is to get them graduated on time, right? And to promote them accordingly and make sure they're passing their classes. That's our number one goal as school counselors. Social workers' number one goal is to make sure they're coming to school, right? Because the law says if they don't come to school up to the age of 16, they can take them to court. So that's social workers' truancy is their number one goal. And then psychologists are doing a lot of testing for IEPs and 504s. So as you heard, those three roles, none of them are completely 100% focused on mental health. So we need all the help we can get. So please make sure you are a safe space for kids. We are trying our best to teach resilience skills earlier and earlier in the district, helping kids learn how to verbalize their feelings, help teaching them how to set boundaries. The earlier the better. Social media is a beast, and there is no such thing as boundaries on social media. They will put any and everything on social media. But you don't realize as youth, they are continuously comparing their full picture, right? They can see the full picture of their lives to other people's highlight reels, right? And their frontal lobes, the brain development, are not developed yet enough to realize that's their highlight reel, right? Like that's not their whole story. And they find themselves experiencing a lot of FOMO and a lot of loneliness and a lot of comparison, and it's just that it's just not good for their brain development. It's not good for their development at all. And so we have our best we're teaching more resilient skills earlier in the school system and trying to get kids more, even before their developmentally ready, get them more focused on their mental health, because the earlier the better. Listen to what they are not saying. Action speaks louder than words. So sometimes, like I said earlier, it's hard for them to talk. So watch what they're doing. If they start acting out, if we start seeing them change drastically, like there's something going on. If they won't talk to you, help them talk, get them to talk to somebody, right? It's not about who they talk to, it's about the fact that they're talking. So let's make sure that we are listening to what they're not saying as well. Educate stakeholders as needed. I like to do as much of this as possible, because like I said, it takes a village. Model. I was so glad to see that in her presentation, because I believe that the more we model it as adults, we can't, that whole do what I say, not what I do thing, that's the devil. Like, we have to show them. They are watching us. And I do mean watching. They watch everything. As a school counselor, I get to hear all about it. Trust me. They watch everything. And if you are not living what you're speaking, you might as well save your words. So make sure we're modeling holistic wellness as adults. Go to therapy if you got some trauma from your childhood. It's never too late, right? Show them how to get healing, how to be whole. Ensure access to mental health supports. Like I said earlier, we are a very rich community. We do have a lot of agencies, but we don't have a lot of practitioners. But we have a state, if you don't know, since COVID, one of the better things that came out of COVID is teletherapy. It's a beautiful thing. Anybody in the state can see you under their license, right? So you can see a therapist. I have several clients that don't live in Winston-Salem, that don't live in the Triad area. You can see a therapist anywhere in North Carolina. You know, we may have a serious shortage, but try. And there are some, since the storm in the West, they now have allowed other practitioners from bordering states to apply for licensure in North Carolina. So it's actually helped us a little bit since the storm in the West. We're more reactive than proactive, aren't we? Engage the whole family. It takes a village. Know the community resources, come to things like this, get educated, know the risk factors and the symptoms, and then respond immediately. Those are just some of my tips. There's so many, guys. The better you are educated, the better advocate you can be. Do not minimize mental health, because it is real, and please, please know your resources. This is a list of everything that I'm aware of in Forsyth County. I've spent a lot of time over the last 4 months since I took this job meeting with people from different agencies and trying my best to create more sound relationships between the district and agencies, because we can't do it all by ourselves. It takes a village. And so I've spent a lot of time getting to know people in the district and making sure they know that I'm here. I am creating a mental health handbook. It will take a while, but we are working on that. So these are just some of the resources that I know of around here that can be beneficial as needed. That is all for me. I know we have a question and answer session, and we got 8 minutes to go.
Thank you so very much. I'm going to say thanks again. What a rare combination to hear both a researcher and a practitioner, to get this foundation of an actual typical teen and then a hard look at measures of difficulties, and to have both of you offer resources and ways to take action and advocate and watch and listen and know adolescents well. That was a really rare combination, and you got so much information into such a short amount of time. All right, so we build on that. How can we construct a conversation? What questions or comments might you address to either or both of our speakers to hear just a little bit more of them more in dialogue now? Yes.
I just have a comment. I'm so much more hopeful than I have been about youth in the U.S. And I generally am a positive person, and saying there's more positive than bad. And the research and the resources have really helped to solidify that positive thinking.
Would you like to comment on the comment?
No, you don't need to.
We'll let people have questions.
Yeah.
I'm fine. Yeah.
This is not really a question, but I want to piggyback on what you said. In both cases, I heard around the 30% figure in terms of problematic, which is, you know, we have a tendency in media and news and so forth to emphasize what's wrong in any area. So 30% is significant, but 70% may be doing pretty well. So we don't want to ignore the 30%, but we also want to remember and not just throw up our hands, as you said. and respond well and appropriately. So thank you for that. I'm glad that showed up in both presentations.
We wanna keep it at the 30% though, right? So we can be
Less.
proactive. Or less, right, right.
Well, and I think, I'll just piggyback, I appreciate what you just described so clearly, because I was thinking as you were sharing what you did, you know, people might be saying, well, wait, we just heard, you know, most teens are, and it's still true, both things are true. Most teens are not engaging in some serious, persistent problems in those domains, but that's not to ignore the teens who are having significant problems. Some of the numbers up there were like 29 out of 100,000. That's still a low percentage, but it's still a lot of teens.
Right.
So both are true, and we kind of have to hold both of those things in tension.
Hopefully this doesn't sound negative, because I'm starting to see, because I work with Imprints Cares and I work with younger children, and I'm starting to see a lot of what you were describing in a lot of my younger students, like K through 3. That whole moody, depression, anxiety kind of things. Any ideas as to why it's showing up in those kids? Because they were born in 20 and they were born in 21 and they're in kindergarten, and all of a sudden I mean, it's unbelievable some of the things that they're dealing with at 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, and I'm just scratching my head.
I have a lot of hypotheses. I don't do a lot of research, but I will say I think a lot of it is that we're putting screens in front of them way too early. We're giving 2-year-olds laptops and iPads to keep them busy, and that blue light behind that screen is not good for them. And then we're exposing them to too much too early. A lot of people don't want to say this, but I'm not a political figure, so I will. Parenting is very important. We have to be mindful of what we're exposing our children to and what we're allowing too early. She kind of alluded to the different, authoritative and so forth. You have to find some balance as parents, and sometimes we don't have that balance. We have also saw an increase. We've had 2 vapes with kindergartners already this school year.
Do what?
Vapes. We
Thank
found
goodness.
2 vapes, 2 incidents with vapes with kindergartners, and a few first graders and so forth. So like, we see it as well. Yeah. That's why I said we want to keep it at the 30, right? So if we don't, we need to ring the alarm before those numbers start going up, because
So
we're not.
then that question goes to the second piece. How do we wake these parents up?
They're recording me right now, but we can have that conversation later. Ring the alarm. That's becoming my motto. We're trying. As a district, we're trying.
Well, and I think parents need support too. Parents are going through some of their own issues, traumas, whatever, from childhood,
Right.
from COVID, from social isolation, which is a huge problem for all ages right now. So I don't have the answer for how we provide that support adequately to the number of people who need it, but if we look at it empathically for parents as opposed to judgmentally, maybe we look at what they need to be good parents.
And maybe providing the supports for them is part of the answer, but like I said earlier, the importance of modeling, right? There are a lot of us that had traumas in our childhood and things that we experienced that we had to get healed from and we had to work through. And so I think breaking down some of the barriers and the biases that people have towards mental health will help, and becoming more whole ourselves will help our kids.
I was hoping to circle back to the social isolation and loneliness. I teach 18 to 22-year-olds. I have a 19 and a 21-year-old of my own. And my perception, maybe this is my own sort of stereotype or something, is that they don't see that isolation as problematic in the way that I do. They don't seem to recognize it as isolation they don't seem to recognize that I am lonely, right, and so like my own children were, a freshman and a junior in high school when they came home for COVID, and the older one didn't go back. And so I guess I'm just wondering how, like, as an adult who has had, has a lot of face-to-face interactions with people and reaps the benefits of that. And I find myself constantly like knocking on the closed bedroom door, or even with my students in my classroom, are you guys getting together to do this project together? Well, I emailed her, that kind of thing. And I wanna say just, sit at a carol in the library together, but I think the problem is not me saying you should do this, but just sort of more like helping them recognize, wow, I really could use like some, coffee with a friend or that kind of thing. I'm not sure how to approach that in either my professional setting or my personal life.
It's probably more than a 1 minute answer. I think here, you're talking about an age group, you do different things for different ages, right? But making it happen with younger adolescents, we're gonna have this family time, we're gonna go, making play dates, or, that's the wrong word for teenagers, but, and then I would just say, it's kind of like with exercise, sometimes you have to do it, it's hard, you don't feel comfortable about it, but think about how you feel afterwards. You feel so good afterwards, never regret it, and maybe as they practice these things and you point out, like, wasn't that talking in person kind of fun? Or, playing board games, having things that help that facilitate that, so they're not this, I don't know what to talk about with this person. I don't have practice talking face to face with people. I heard someone almost my age say the other day, oh, I hate calling people on the phone. I was just like, we've all got so used to just texting, we don't even wanna call people on the phone, even if we're 50 years old. Anyway, there's a lot I could say, but.
Comes back to the modeling. I think it's important for us to show them, more than tell them, and it's okay for them to be mad when I have a 17-year-old, and he gets upset when I drag him off to do things, and that's okay. You're not gonna sit in your room and play the game all day.
Probably easier with a 17-year-old than a 19 or 21-year-old.
But the earlier the better, right?
The 21-year-old is kind of the hardest one to sort of get, because they say, I'm an adult, so why you can't make me play games.
And it's true. As a professor, giving them group projects, I think, is a great thing. I tell students in my lab, no, don't email each other, get together during the week. I wanna know when you got together and talked about this. There's no easy, perfect solution, but keep trying.
It is a very good
Keep
thing that
knocking.
we want to keep talking. It is a very good thing that we want to keep talking. We will respect the time of people who expect to leave at 1, but maybe if you can linger a few more minutes, there could be some more conversations. I love that this topic has prompted questions about personal relationships, about group settings like classrooms, and about societal resources. All of those are ways for us to focus. One last round.
How are the concerns of the mental health being incorporated into the code of conduct for the Winston-Salem schools?
It is literally being looked at right now. I've just attended one meeting, about the revisions, and so it's a brand new piece that we're trying to, include, and how that can be included, without creating, more barriers.
We're gonna stop there. And
But we'll
that
hang
is an
around.
excellent place to stop, just because the clock is making us do it, but we do have time to say thank you one more time. Please watch your email, sorry, we should phone everyone. For notification of Faith in the City events in 2025. We really appreciate having you here today.
Thanks for coming.